Are you serious? Are you serious? What? Yes. It is getting to be very, very, very intense with Russia and NATO. And this is we got breaking news just now. Breaking news. Just received it in the information. It's coming from Russia today. I want to thank David Vincent for sending it to me. But here's what it says. If NATO encroaches on nuclear Russia, it will be punished. That is a direct quote. Russia has zero trust in NATO and believes that the alliance is preparing to go to war against it. A leading Russian foreign policy expert warned that if it comes to a new big conflict, Moscow won't fight it on its own soil. In an interview with the German magazine, Sergei Karganov, a veteran political scientist and member of the influential Foreign Policy and Defense Council of the Russian Foreign Ministry, said in bold terms that the risk of a new shooting war in Europe has been on the rise for a decade and is now as high as it was at the height of the Cold War. Matter of fact, he says the abundance of propaganda coming from both sides attests to the dangerous state of the crisis. Quote, the Russian media is more reserved than the Western media, though you have to understand that Russia is very sensitive about defense. We have to be prepared for everything. That is the source of this occasionally massive amount of propaganda, he said. But what is the West doing? It's doing nothing but vilifying Russia. It believes that we are threatening to attack. The situation is compared to the crisis at the end of the 1970s and the beginning of the 1980s. The expert was referring to a massive buildup of intermediate range nuclear missiles in Europe that could have easily led to an unintended nuclear war. The missiles had a very short approach time that left almost no time for an attack side to react, making automatic retaliation the only possible reaction to a decapitating nuclear attack. The situation was diffused by a ban on intermediate range missiles, which was signed in 1987. That was under Ronald Reagan. Now, the current buildup of NATO forces on Russia's border is not unlike the installation of the Pershing and the SS-20 missiles 3 decades ago, at least in terms of the misguided justification for deploying such missiles. Quote, fears in countries like Poland, Lithuania, Latvia are to be understood by NATO stationing weapons there. But that doesn't help them, he says. We interpret that as a provocation. In a crisis, we will destroy exactly these weapons. Russia will never again fight on its own territory. The help offered by NATO is not symbolic help for the Baltic states. It's a provocation. NATO initiates an encroachment against a nuclear power like ourselves. It will be punished, he stressed. Part of the problem is the breakdown in communications. But I thought that the Obama administration, I thought he was the great communicator. I thought Obama was the man who was going to wave his hand and heal the land. I thought he was going to sit down and have crumpets and tea with the Iranians and walk hand in hand, that Putin was not a problem. Instead, we have a total breakdown in foreign policy. It's such a failed foreign policy of the Obama administration as it relates to Europe, as it relates to the relationship with Russia. It's horrible. And the Middle East is in a total state of madness after the Arab Spring of democracy that Obama said it is, when it's nothing more than an absolute radical terrorist breeding ground. Nation after nation has fallen, just like the Bible said they would in Isaiah chapter 19. And Egypt didn't escape either, just like it says in Isaiah 19. We're seeing, and we have been witnessing, biblical prophecy, though. And so part of the problem is the breakdown of communications, as evidenced by the work, or lack thereof, of the NATO-Russia Council, which was created to resolve differences between the alliance and Russia. But it is no longer a legitimate body. So NATO has become a different alliance. When we began the dialogue with NATO, it was a defensive alliance of democratic powers. But then the NATO-Russian Council served as the cover for the legalization of NATO expansion. When we really needed it, it wasn't there. So Russia is a lot of propaganda, like you said. They're flexing their muscles. They're moving tanks. They're showing us that they got nukes on trucks, moving it all over the country. Then this morning they released that they're working on a new aerospace nuclear bomber that will fire nuclear bombs from space. Now they're telling us that if NATO encroaches on Russia, that it will be punished. If you encroach on nuclear Russia, it will be punished. So there's a lot going on here, folks. A lot of saber rattling since Obama went to Europe and met with NATO leaders in Warsaw, Poland. There's been nothing but aggressive strategic military movement, both by NATO forces and by Russian forces. And Stephen Bendanoon, who lives in the Czech Republic, has been an eyewitness to this and says it's unprecedented what they are witnessing along the borders of these NATO countries. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on what's going on there, because it's a dangerous time like we've not seen in many, many years. Give your life to Jesus Christ. He is coming soon. I don't know the day nor the hour. No, not even the angels in heaven, not the Son of God even, but the Father only. But we can see the day approaching, and you do not want to be left behind. When God pours out his wrath, you think it's bad man's persecution and man's threats of wars, and even having wars and rumors of wars. You don't want to be here when there's the absolute death and destruction that will fall upon the planet during the wrath of God. Are you saved?